You're listening to Inside the Mines with Dante Marsh and Ryan Hyde, a podcast about life, lessons, and whatever the hell else they want to talk about.
What was the purpose?
You have a teenage daughter?
I got a 20-year-old.
Oh wow.
Dude, I'm 41, so
wow. Bro, you hated wearing condoms back in the day. We all had to avoid slipping one past the goalie, but evidently you did, and you're like, all right, that's it. We're keeping this result.
Yeah.
Wow. I got an 18-year-old, so I'm not too far behind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got an 18 and a 12-year-old. An 18 and a 12-year-old.
Jeez, I'm 43. I have 0 kids. I don't even have a dog.
You better give.
I'm taking my time, bro. You fellas are way more. You guys were in the advanced class. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stick here in remedial and just take my time with shit.
Yeah.
So
today's guest is from Toronto, Ontario. He's well known in Canada as the host of Cabbie on the Street, Cabbie Unlimited, Cabbie All Stars, and Cabbie Presents. He's also hosted Sportsnet's NBA XL and J Zone. Please welcome to the show, Cabbie Richards. How's it going today, Cabbie?
I'm wonderful. And you guys?
I'm good, thanks.
Phenomenal.
I'm taking a cue from, I've been watching Drink Champs recently, and Nori, he's all about like the celebration and the applause. So I'm like, I'm gonna celebrate myself. I mean, I'm kind of that jerk that's doing it, but hey, listen, I'm starting the day with some positive energy and celebrating me. Celebrate us, fellas. All right, let's go.
Here we go. Also, welcome to the show, my brother, former BC Lion, CFL All-Star, and a friend of mine, Mr. Dante Marsh.
Thank you. Like always, glad to be doing it.
Another clap for Mr. Dante Marsh. Here we go. Let's get it. Let's start it on a good note, boys.
Oh yeah.
All right, Cabbie. So I'm in Walmart last night, and it's time to buy some toilet paper. So I head over to the aisle, and I'm looking around. I'm looking at the toilet paper, and it's like this, 8 equals 12, 12 equals 24, 2.6 equals 80. Then you got your 1-ply, your 2-ply, your 3-ply. I mean, it's getting overwhelming at best. What do you feel like right now? When you're buying toilet paper, where does your mind go when you're out there buying toilet paper?
The price. It's always the price. And then there are certain brands that I like, or like one brand, but you got to go at least 2 or 3-ply. But usually the price, usually whatever's on sale. Listen, my parents are from the Caribbean, so we are a very working class family growing up. So mom's was full lady, coupons cut out in her purse. And then when we would go to the, it wasn't Walmart back then. It was like, I was going to say Tower. What were the Byway? Like there was Bargain Heralds. Like it was some real hood-ish. And so in my brain, has always been ingrained, look for the best price. And if you pay full price for something, then you're getting ripped off. That was the mentality. So some things you can't avoid paying full price for, but that's where my mind would go, especially in Walmart. I'd be like, okay, what's on sale? I'm going to get that one.
I hear you, man.
So what did you end up doing? What was the decision that you made?
I think it was the 3-ply for the cheapest price is what was the decision, right? So we got each other's back on that one. I mean,
but with toilet paper though, you're wiping your ass. So
you don't want to go too expensive.
Hey, I done played football for a lot of years, and you've been on some teams, even in college, where they come in and they put that cheap ass toilet paper in the stall.
Right.
You're very upset. Let's say that. So my thing is, my dad, like I'm from Oakland, I'm from the hood and shit. So, we didn't have, everything. We didn't have a lot, but when it came to certain things, like you just said, you gonna spend that money. Like whether it be bread, I ain't no white ass Wonder Bread. I'm not doing it. We used to get, a little board, top of the line, Roman meal, wheat bread, and toilet paper. My daddy was, hey, you wiping your ass, you need at least 2-ply. And Charmin, I try to get I'm gonna get the jumbo. I'm gonna go to Costco out here and I'm gonna get a bulk toilet paper. I'm not looking for the cheap deal for toilet paper. I'm just not.
Costco, that's the move right there. And remember at the beginning of the pandemic, how it was like The Walking Dead. Like toilet paper was gold. Paper towels were like platinum. And then it was for like 2 months, you couldn't find toilet because people were just hoarding. And, obviously it was like the first spike of the coronavirus. We're now into the third spike of the coronavirus, but everything seems kind of normal in those stores. But there was a time where, to your point, Dante, like toilet paper there was a premium on the premium. So I'm glad we're past that. Thank God.
I hope we stay past it.
Me too, man. Me too.
So that brings me to this. Let's talk. Let's get into it. I gotta ask this question now because it felt like a perfect time to segue into that. So you're from Canada, obviously. We hung out before in Toronto. Used to see you do the Cabbie on the street thing. My whole
Thank you
was up there in Canada, right? So being currently in the U.S. with all that's going on in terms of the election, this is what I want to know. What is your opinion being a Canadian and currently being in the States and just seeing all this shit unfold? Like, what's your viewpoints on it?
Things could be a lot easier, but I understand that in the United States, changes in the government take a lot of time. So what I've been hearing anecdotally is the Electoral College, you guys can get rid of that. Because when that was first enacted, it was obviously to give states the same or like a weighted representation when electing the presidents. But there was some elements of it benefiting slave owners or something. I'm a little unfamiliar of the origins of the Electoral College, but from what I'm been hearing anecdotally, you guys can get rid of that and just go with the popular vote, because it's not land that votes for the highest office in America. It's the people. Mm-hmm. So who cares if there are, 40 million residents in California, because there are 40 million in Florida and there are 35 million in Texas and 25 or 30 million in the state of New York. Like, that's where the concentration of people are in your country.
Correct.
Also, America is divided. Like, it's, this year was like, there was the most mobilization of voters in the history of the country, which is great. A lot of young people, so a lot of young Latin voters voting, a lot of young African-American voters voting. 45 got up to 70 million and Joe Biden was up, 74, something like. The popular vote was huge. But people are emotional in your country, bro. Like, there are, and Bomani Jones says this of ESPN says this all the time. There are two Americas, and that is a fact. You could have people I think it was in Michigan, who are storming one of the counting centers, stop the count, protesting and demonstrating their right to, protest. But there were no cops showing up like the army. There was no tear gas. There were no protesters getting beaten like a month ago or 2 months ago in a BLM demonstration, which is they're just, the Black Lives Matter move. You have people out in the streets that are just obviously in pain, and they're like saying, hey, this system is broken, it needs fixing, we want our civil liberties. So there's one way and then they're met with huge escalations of force and not de-escalating everything. So it's two Americas, man. So on one end, you see how the one group of peaceful protesters are treated, and then you see how another group of peaceful protesters are treated. So those are, I guess, some of the top end things that I see as a Canadian living in the United States. And there are many others, but those are some of the things that I've noticed. But Dante, your country is massive amount of opportunity, mm-hmm. but some of that opportunity, there's a tax that you have to pay. And, that's kind of the one of those unwritten things that culturally that you would have to pay in the United States.
It's all about narrative, and
that's also true. That's also true.
The Black Lives Matter movement, I don't support that. The reason being is it's not even what it stands for is not what it is. So you have real Black people and listeners, please don't misconstrue what I'm about to say. When I say real Black folks, I'm talking about woke Black people really understanding what's going on. Case in point, several months ago when it was a lot more tension, like, you know, after the George Floyd situation, you had buildings being spray painted on, and this is all caught on video. Mm-hmm. Like, social media has done a great job in regards to news reporting. So you're getting like the real, you're not getting, you know, crisis actors and fake news. You have some white girls spray painting on buildings, Black Lives Matter, throwing rocks, tearing shit up. And it's crazy because a Black Lives Matter movement is getting blamed for a lot of these things. And it's not even really the Black Lives Matter or people that really are, you know, want you know, justice for Black people. If you understand where I'm going with it, like it's the narrative has been changed so much. It's blame Black Lives Matter, right? That's what it turned into. So when I say I don't support it, like, I'm not seeing how it benefits us, because it's really a negative thing, because now all the stuff that's going on, the narrative is being spun saying Black Lives Matter or Antifa, when in reality, the people that are saying that are the people that's doing some of this stuff. It's so like
doing some of what stuff? What do you mean doing some of this stuff?
Okay, so for example, you have when the riots or protesting started, you have pallets of nicely bricks just set so conveniently in front of buildings. Mm-hmm. That seems like a setup for me.
So are you as you speak about narratives, then it sounds like the narrative has been co-opted, and the Black Lives Matter, its original messaging and it's context has been changed.
Hijacked. That's
hijacked. That's actually a better, hijacked. Yeah. So when you say you don't support Black Lives Matter, is it because it has been hijacked and it's not, the focus isn't on what it's originally supposed to represent?
Absolutely. That's why. Because it's not, it's how it began or how we perceive it to have been. That's not what it is. It's turned into something else. Just like when we talk about the Kaepernick kneeling 4 years ago, all he wanted, nonviolent protests using his platform, which is huge, to show and bring more awareness to what's going on, what's really going on, because we're seeing it every day on video now. So you can't hide it. You can't, let's stop turning a blind eye to the truth and reality of what's going on. That's all they were doing. Then you had the narrative getting spent. Oh, they're being disrespectful to the flag. They're being disrespectful to soldiers. My daddy fought in Vietnam. If he was still living today, he'd be on the same shit. I kneel because the original message was, let's bring awareness to police brutality and unfair treatment to people of color.
Okay, so Dante, it sounds like you're more upset with whoever has co-opted and whoever's hijacked the narrative versus the actual movement. That's what it sounds like, because you are aware that the movement's hijacked it, the movement has been hijacked. You're aware that there are agents of chaos out there in the street setting up pallets of bricks for people to just destroy property. You're aware that there are protesters, and then there are these agents of chaos who are smashing windows in full gas masks, and we've seen videos. So when you said you don't support the movement, it's a kind of it took me back for a second, but it sounds like because the movement has been co-opted, that's why you don't support it. So maybe that frustration should be on that narrative, which has changed.
Well, that's where the frustration stems. It's not because the movement isn't the movement anymore. Once something gets hijacked, it's not the movement no more. I'm supporting real people of color doing real things, right?
But do you believe that? Do you believe that their intentions and their goals are to change some of these systematic things?
I don't. It's hard to believe anything now here, what you see or what you hear, because everything it's like for me right now, just how I'm feeling right now, it's a mirage. Everything is, in order. It's all things are being placed, and it's just like when you talk about affirmative action, that was supposed to benefit people of color.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think it did too much for people of color. I think it did more for, you know, white women in the workplace, in the professional workplace, than it has done
That's
for anybody.
interesting.
So when I say the narratives get changed and they get hijacked, it becomes something else. So you can't support something. If I say I'm supporting this, and then along the way, it's like this, going back to like preschool or first grade, right? You get in a big circle in the classroom and the teacher tell one student something in the ear.
Broken telephone?
By the time it got all the way around, it was a totally different story.
Wait, are you comparing the Black Lives Matter movement to broken telephone in elementary school?
I'm just saying, people will call me what you call a conspiracy theorist. I think I'm a thinker. And what I'm saying is all the things that I've seen with the Black Lives Matter movement, I'm not really seeing it the way some other people are seeing it. I'm seeing it as something that started off one way. Now it's something totally different. I don't support the totally different thing.
But I think, Dante, I think you're smart enough to know that there are disingenuous actors that are trying to change the narrative. And I think in its purest form, it's like, this is just calling awareness to something that people do not want to acknowledge, that there are two Americas, and the tidal wave of support and getting allyship in this movement to say, hey, the mayors need to change their relationships with the police unions, and the mayors set the budget for these police unions, and some of these police officers who are, and I loathe the expression "a few bad apples," because as we know, a few bad apples spoils a whole bunch, and they love to say it's just a few bad apples, but all we're seeing are the bad apples. But with the energy that is moving towards state senates, you know, as you know, the senates write the laws for their states, and the mayors have so much power in each jurisdiction because they control the budget. And then you have the attorney general, who a lot of times those cases get elevated to the state's attorney general. And now you need people like these police officers who are killing unarmed people of color. They need to be punished. So here's a question. If there were no Black Lives Matter movement, do you think that Derek Chauvin, who murdered George Floyd and knelt on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, do you think that that person would have been arrested at all, or even been indicted for, I think it's third-degree murder or second degree? I can't remember what he was charged with.
Here's the deal. It'll never, the punishment will never fit the crime in those instances.
Correct.
So what I'm saying is there's always been two Americas. Before, centuries ago, we know this. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is common knowledge. So what I'm frustrated with is the non-action, because these type of things could have stopped decades ago.
What type of things?
The continual mistreatment of people of color, not just Black people, Latino people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. We're talking about, when we go back to the 60s, you're talking about the civil rights movement. You go through all of that. That was a great historical time. All the awareness that came from that decade, and we are sitting here in 2020 going through the same bullshit.
But you know that the system is not, the way that it was designed was not to be equal for us.
No. And I know that.
Color.
Oh, I know that. So what I'm saying is, in 2020, we should have gone through enough to know, because all that's going to happen is this is going to continue to be chaos, and then it'll be no Americans, because there are two, definitely are two. But I think I'm not going to say the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm going to say this whole movement, because it's multiple. You know, you got people over here, you got people over there, you got people in the middle, you got people everywhere, right? The only good thing I think that's come out of the whole
racial uprising,
is there is awareness. So there's more opportunity for conversation. Like me and Ryan had a conversation one night, and it was dope. But he's Canadian, so in Canada, the racial tension isn't as it's nowhere near what it is here. Mm-hmm. So we were having an open dialogue about, what's going on, and it's a Black man and a white man having this good conversation, this good dialogue. And I think if anything that's good that's come out of this whole situation is it has done that. And I think that's what you were alluding to a little earlier. It has created more awareness to what is going on. So we can have more dialogue.
I would push back on you, Dante, when you say that you don't like believe in the Black Lives Matter movement, because I believe it's so important to have this pressure now on people who are stakeholders in their individual cities and in their states to make, and the movement is demanding substantial change. And that's what it is needed. And also there are now white allies who have joined the movement that recognize that they have privilege and that like things are effed up for people of color. Like a white person will rarely have to consider how they speak to a police officer when they get pulled over. But you and I know, because we've either heard anecdotally or we were told by our parents, oh, hands 10 and 2 on the wheel. Like I was telling somebody the other day, if I get pulled over, my license, my registration goes on the dashboard before the cop arrives at my car. Because if that guy's in a bad mood, he's had a fight with his wife, or he's had a bad day because somebody's pissing him off in the precinct, that could be the last time that I breathe, because that person's having an effed up day. And if his body cam, if I don't ask him to turn on his body camera to make sure it's on, no, I would just be another statistic.
Correct.
So what Black Lives Matter I think has done for a lot of people that don't look like us is like brought this important awareness and like, oh wow, this thing is messed up, because Will Smith said it best, like race, there isn't more racism. It's just the racism is now being recorded on phones.
Well, because it's been covert. It's here, especially California. So I'm born and raised in California. My mom's dad is originally from Mississippi. He's 93. So when he came to California in the 40s, he told me how it was. He said, Dante, I wish it was like back in the South, because at least I knew who was who. Now it's a lot of covert racism, right? So people hide behind. And the last thing I'll say on this point, you talked about it earlier. For me personally, this is what I suggested, and I think me and Ryan talked about this before. So if you have a police officer that commits a crime, because generally speaking, when you look at the track record of the cop that's accused of doing whatever they did to the unarmed civilian, they have a track record. They have complaints, they have similar incidents, years of it, right? So my whole solution to that problem was to be fire that cop indefinitely, no pay, and his pension, because they have some nice pensions. My uncle was a police officer for a long time. They got some nice pensions. You take their pension, and that's restitution to the family that you did that to.
Interesting. Wow.
And
that would be swinging the other. Wow. Police unions would never go for it. You would never ever get that.
They wouldn't, but it'll solve it though. Watch, because you'll be less likely to shoot to kill an unarmed civilian if you knew what was really on the line. Watch this, consequences. It's just like a kid. If you get real consequences, a lot of this shit will stop. Because there's no consequences. Yeah,
which they have rarely gotten. Because they've been protected. You get suspended with pay, and then you're able, if you get fired, you're able to join the precinct next door in the next county over you can move around with impunity, not impunity, but you can move around easily without any problem. So you can just get another job. But yeah, you're right. There's a protection for police officers, which often empowers them to act with impunity, as we saw with Derek Chauvin murdering George Floyd. Whoa, what a doozy. Wow, we got into the weeds there. We got just deep right out the gate. Woo.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't always happen like that.
Nah, we usually build up to it. It seemed like a good time to talk about it. So
I'm always ready. I'm always down to talk about that. It's like, what that conversation demonstrated, Dante, is that Black people are not a monolith. We don't all think the same. We're not all in lockstep, even though we have shared experiences, and that is sort of foundationally how we have kind of a similar perspective. But in that, we're a mosaic of people, obviously mosaic of colors and experiences. I mean, you're from California, I'm from Toronto. and your parents are from, or you have some heritage in the South.
Mm-hmm.
My parents are from the Caribbean. So that's one thing that a lot of times people don't consider, is that we can have a mosaic of opinions and perspectives. But anyway, okay, so let's keep going.
All right, boys. So Cabbie, you started out as an intern on The Score. Take us back to what led up to you first appearing on TV.
I was an intern at The Score. So I was a student at Ryerson, and I was taking radio and television. And in my second year, there was a guy at school who's like, "Hey, give me your resume tomorrow. I'm working at a place called Headline Sports, and they need interns." So I was walking down the hall with my friend Adnan Verk, and we're like, the next day, punched up our resumes, gave it to this dude. His name was Steph Gagnon, brought it in. And then a week later, we had an interview with the production manager, and then we got in as interns. I think we got in because we went to Ryerson, and Ryerson is like has a prestigious radio and television program and a journalism program. And like half of the people at Headline Sports, which then became The Score, were Ryerson grads, and then the other half were people that went to this college in Ottawa, outside Ottawa, called Algonquin College, or maybe it was in Ottawa. So I think that's why we got in, because on my resume in high school, I worked at Canadian Tire, Wendy's, Beaver Lumber, and I was on like student council, and like I used to cut the videos for the football banquet and the athletic banquet at the end of the year, where you just splice together the highlights. And then I would just like add in like movie clips. So I'd have a bunch of VHS tapes. So I'd throw in a random clip from Dumb and Dumber, or Ace Ventura, like the football scene, or I would mix in like actual plays that I would tape from NFL Countdown. So I had like no experience, but anyway, we got in, and then, so we were writing scripts at first. So Adnan, Tim McAuliffe, Sid Sixero, myself, we were all interns. We all started by writing scripts. Tim went to Carleton University. Sid went to Humber College in Toronto. I don't know if you guys remember a guy named Ryan Payton. He was also an intern. I can't remember what school he went to, but there were like 10 of us, and we were writing scripts for Mark Hebscher and Greg Sansoni. So we would basically, it was like the nightly highlight show would be like, all right, as I'm seeing in your room here, LaShawn McCoy, Brian Westbrook. So it'd be like, Eagles versus the Lions. And this is late 90s. So, rookie Donovan McNabb, play action pass to, God, who would have been a receiver back then? Who would have been a receiver?
On the Eagles?
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to say Deshaun Jackson, because I can't remember who were the part of the receiving corps.
Wasn't Thrash with the Eagles?
James Thrash, Terrell Owens.
But Terrell Owens was with the 49ers back then. It doesn't matter. It could have been Donovan McNabb, play action pass to Terrell Owens, 65-yard touchdown, 7-0 Eagles in the first quarter. So we would write that, and then the announcers, Sansoni and Hebscher, would add their own flair to it. They'd add a nickname or their own, they might say T.O. took it to the crib, or took it to the house. Actually, take it to the house is probably more representative that time, because it was Trick Daddy had that big song.
Mm-hmm.
Take it to and then later Tim and Sid, they got on the air, and then Tim was great with his ad libs, and he loved to infuse hip hop culture into his highlights in a similar way that Stuart Scott would. I think Stuart Scott was the first to really popularize adding hip hop vernacular to the highlights. And so it was a way to distinguish yourself. Okay, anyway. So then in 2001, there were two hosts. One was named Lisa Bose and Steve Coolius. They were working on the weekend show, and they suggested, hey, we want to change our weekend highlight show, and we want to add a man on the street segment. Would you be interested? And I'm like, I'm not sure. At the time, I wanted to be the next Will Smith. I wanted to be Denzel, but I didn't have the talent to be Will Smith or Denzel. But I was like auditioning for commercials and trying to have this burgeoning acting career. And I might get a job once every 6 months, or if I was lucky, once every 4 months. I would get like a one line in like a Tim Hortons commercial. That's good. Or I would like eat the sandwich, and that would pay for my rent for a few months. And as a broke student, like getting, $2,000 was like $2,000. It was like, it felt like it was $200,000. So that's how it started. So anyway, so I went to my boss. I'm like, hey, I got this idea. Boss is like, all right, we'll go make one of these man on the street segments. and let me see what it looks like before I agree to put it on the air. So I did, and it kind of sucked. He's like, do another one. So I did another one. And that's the one that he really liked. So I was asking people, interestingly, that you said this, Dante, about the national anthem. Back in 2001, I was out in the streets of Toronto asking people how they felt about the national anthem being played before sporting events. Because after high school, we don't ever hear it. And it wasn't until, I don't remember. I think in the NFL, they didn't start playing it until the mid 2000s, but it wasn't part of, like, it was at the Super Bowl, but I don't think it was a part of every NFL Sunday game. I don't think, but I could definitely be wrong. So anyway, it was like half and half. People were like, yeah, I don't really need it. Just kind of like this ceremony. And then anyway, at the end of the video, I got people to sing "Oh Canada," our national anthem. And then I just edited it together. And I was also singing, and I was in one clip, I was singing to a baby in a carriage. And then the baby started to cry. So my boss was like, okay, this is funny. So that's how the first episode of, back then it was called On the Street with Cabbie. And then after like 6 or 7 episodes, then I changed it to Cabbie on the Street just because it rolled a little easier. And then, yeah, that was the summer of 2001. And then away I went. But it just started as like me harassing random people on college campuses and at the mall or in parks just around Toronto, because my cameraman, this guy named Bryant, he had a car and he had the camera and I had the big mouth and the stupid face. And I had the balls enough to just approach random. And I got rejected a lot. It is hard. Maybe not so hard now because people are just so used to being on camera because everybody has a recording device in their pocket.
Right.
But back in 2001, this doughy fat dude, hey man, do you mind? Can I ask you a couple of sports questions for my little segment? No, I'm good. Like, I would get rejected for every 10 people that appeared on camera. I would probably get 4 rejections for those 10 people. It was disheartening. So I got used to, also my high school experience, I got rejected by girls often, bro. Like, it was, I was putting in work, man. Like, there were long at bats, to use a baseball analogy. A lot of foul balls. I was just trying to stay in the box, and they were like 20 pitch at bats. And finally, I might hit a little dribbler and get a girl's number or get the ability to, like, hey, do you want to go to the movies? I come from an era where we would go, when we went out to like an all ages day, like night at a club, like the dude with the pen was the MVP of the crew.
Yes.
Because then if you gotta, you're building rapport with a girl, it would take hours too. You couldn't just roll up. I didn't have that kind of game where you just roll up on a girl like, hey, what's up? Where are you from? Blah, blah. Can I get your number? It had to take me a lot of eye contact, a lot of vibing, had to do something silly to get her attention. And then finally I could, you start engaging engaging in the conversation. And then if it went well, you can go to the bar and get a napkin and then write her number on the napkin. And then that napkin was like a home run. So that's the era I came from. So anyway.
We in the same era.
Yeah, okay.
So, Cabbie, but get this though. Remember we talked about earlier how me and Dante had children and you didn't? Maybe we had our game.
You guys were hitting home runs early.
Like, bro. Early. We're talking like grand slams out of the park, brothers. Out of the park. Like, yes. We're going deep.
Yeah. I got off the porch fairly early. That's dope as shit. I love, because I'm 41. I'll be 42 in February. So we in that same era, right?
Yeah.
So when you talk about the napkin and the get number, and I had a beeper. So I tell because I coach at a junior college out here, and I tell all my youngsters, I'm like, yo, wasn't no YouTube, wasn't no cell phone. It was AOL dial-up. It was, I had a pager.
Yeah.
So,
and then you got some money.
Yeah, like, $7 a month. $7 a month was my beeper.
But that was like status. Like, you had some status to have a beeper. Yeah, bro. I did not. So well done.
So yeah, I remember having to write numbers down and memorize, and then you be out, right? And then you're thinking like, oh man, what was the last 4 digits? And you will try your hardest. You're gonna remember those last 4 digits because you like, she was fine. I gotta remember that phone number.
So Cabbie, didn't you start a street hockey game on a street of Toronto? Because I remember that episode.
Thank you, man. Thank you. So So my producer, Dave Crixt, when he started interning at the Score, or he was hired as a script writer, he was like, I was probably doing the segment for about 6 months, and or maybe 8 months. And he was like, yo, I have some ideas, man. If you let me know when you want them. And I was like, oh, okay. I got some, I'm okay. I'm good. My own ego and hubris. But then finally one day I was like, all right, what do you got? And then he just said this word. He just goes, what about Cabbie on the street hockey? I'm like, oh,
that's gold.
So then one February, lightly drizzling in Toronto, we started playing street hockey, and Dave was the goalie, and we play up to 1. And I would walk, I had 2, crappy hockey sticks and an orange hockey ball. I was like, hey, man, you want to play me in a game of street hockey up to 1? And I remember one dude, his name is Lennox. He was like either coming from a job interview or on his way to work, because he was wearing dress shoes. And then we played at Yonge and Bloor, one of the busiest intersections in Toronto. And then we just waited for the red light over here, red light over here. All right, game on. And we do like, you tap the sticks, 1, 2, 3, and then go. Orange ball in the middle, and then you're off. So we did that in like 6 or 7 different intersections. And that was the first one that really connected with people, because at the Score, the programming was in a loop. It was like a 1-hour loop, and it was basically the same information every hour. So it would get a lot of airplay. Granted, it was a small network, but a lot of people would see it, maybe not at the first time it aired, but over the course of, a few days. So yeah, that was Dave coming on the crew was transformative to my career, because Dave, he like where he can access creative things in his brain. I was always a little bit jealous, because he would have Dave would have 9 great ideas and I'd have 1. And I'm like, oh, so even in the brainstorms, and we were very collaborative, but even before we all right, let's just go think about something. And then we bring ideas together to form what we're going to do in an interview with, say, what we're going to do at the Grey Cup, or what we're going to do at NBA All-Star, or what we're going to do during the Stanley Cup playoffs. DK would always have the better ideas. Like, shit. So anyway, it was a fun time. Definitely a fun time.
So Dave being your man D?
My man D, yeah. So then we just into my signature closing, and I don't even know. I guess because being at Ryerson, when you learn about narratives and stories, there's a beginning, middle, and an end. So I'd always have an intro like, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to do today. We're going to find out how you feel about mascots. And then at the end, I would write like 15 seconds about something having to do with mascots and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's it for me. I'm on the street. I'm old man B. I'm old man D. And then Brian would just throw up a thumbs up, because he's up in front behind the camera. And then Dave, it became a thing. Like, what is Dave going to be doing as the camera pans over? And that was part of one of our little gimmicks in the segment. Dave might be doing the crane kick from Karate Kid on a bench, or he might be eating ice cream, just standing in the middle of a field, or he might be riding a bike. And then camera pan back to me, and I say, I'm gone. So
I totally remember those.
Thanks. Yeah, that became part of the signature sign off. It became an element in the segments for a very long time.
Yeah,
that was dope. I getting up to Canada in 2004, and from 04 to 14 being in Vancouver, watched a lot of your shows. So
thanks,
for me,
man.
it kind of like fused from that era we're talking about, kind of, and this is my perception of it, kind of like how MTV with the reality TV stuff, and then fused it with as you delivering sports. And that's I think that's the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s is when the whole reality TV thing started to kind of push, and it's more interesting for viewers and fans. And I don't know what because it's like, it seems real. You know what I mean? Like, it's not so scripted. So thanks. I think that took it because you got Sports Center, you got ESPN doing their thing, right? And then you had people like Stuart Scott, who was dope. And it made you want to tune in, because it was you're getting the sports, but you're also getting this person that's animated, this person that's like, you know what I mean?
Thanks.
Like, it makes you feel like, man, I want to watch it. I want to, because it became more than sports reporting, or just it was more of it's a show within a show.
Thanks.
So it kept you like your attention. So
I'm sorry to cut you off there, Dante. I really got to give props to a guy named Al Shearer who had a segment called Hits from the Street on BET. And Al, he would go around to like HBCUs. He would go out streets of New York and he would interview people. He would make fun of them more often. And it was really funny for us. But me, I was always self-deprecating. I just felt it was just a little bit kinder to someone who I'm like I'm asking for them for their time. And I didn't want to just start ripping them because they're wearing New Balance sneakers and like you can't afford a pair of J's, or like some of the shenanigans that Hits from the Streets would do. But one thing I did absorb was that he was fearless. Sometimes he would dress in drag, or he was really colorful, and it was a blend. So subconsciously I was boring from him because his segment was, I want to say like 98, 99, 2000. And then, at the same time, a show like Mad Sports was like 2002, 2003 on BET, which was very much kind of sports culture as well. And me, I was like, I always wanted to amplify the personalities of the athletes. And the only time I'd seen that was Ahmad Rashad in NBA Inside Stuff.
Yeah.
And Ahmad he's a pretty traditional broadcaster, but he would get access to the biggest stars in the NBA. And watching that on Saturdays as a 14-year-old, like, this is amazing. He's throwing a football around with Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan's backyard. Or Shaquille O'Neal is smashing the backboard, landing flat on his back because he is a generational talent, or, all these other things. So some of these things informed me when I went out there and I was bothering guys like you, Dante. I'm trying to remember the first time I went to BC. It probably wasn't until, God, I want to say, where I started interviewing some of your teammates, I think was like Bell had a celebrity golf tournament. And oh my gosh, this brother was one of the brothers that was, Spurgeon Wynn.
Spurgeon.
Now Spurgeon, he was drafted ahead of Tom Brady, and that's that. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I didn't really think about that. But I remember that ESPN documentary 199. It's where Tom Brady he definitely knows all the quarterbacks drafted before him, but I think he knew like most of the players drafted before him before they got to him in the 6th round. Mm-hmm. But Spurge, I know he was quarterback for the Argos, but I think he was also the quarterback for the Lions. I think
he was my teammate in 04.
Okay. And then it was like G-Roy Simon was probably the first guy that I started to bother on the regular. And G-Roy was such a G. He was so kind with his time. And then Damon Allen, who I think played with you guys for a couple of seasons.
Before I got there, yeah.
Before you, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think DA, I think he was with the Argos in 04 when the Argos won.
We lost because we lost to them in the Grey Cup.
Right. And then 05 Edmonton won, and I don't think I was out there. Either way, CFL dudes, man, your brethren, the nicest and the best athletes to interview. There was a time where Ricky Foley and I, and like in my for people who are unfamiliar with my style of interviewing, I am obnoxious. I'm loud. My breath is hot. And I always have to have mints. There was a time where Kyle Lowry called me on it once. I was interviewing Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, obviously not football players, basketball players. And like an hour before the interview, I had a burrito, hit up Chipotle, and it had onions on it. So as the interview is about to start, Kyle's like, "Yo, did you have a burrito for lunch?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "How do you know?" He goes, "I could smell the onions." And I was so mortified because this guy could smell the food in my breath. That's how hot my breath is. So Ricky Foley, when he was with a BC Lion for many years, but then when he was with the Argos, I get very close to athletes because there is some humor and awkwardness, and then getting athletes out of their comfort zone sometimes creates a great moment or a reaction. And also, no one ever touches you guys. Like, it's always, so the athlete reporter, unwritten agreement is athlete stands here, reporter stands here. There's a certain amount of space, personal space, that the reporter gives to the athlete. Whether it's in a scrum, they form sort of a half circle around you, arms extended with microphones or recorders to get sound bites for an upcoming matchup or after the game. All right. So Ricky Foley, we were doing something where our noses were so close that Ricky then he rubbed his nose against my nose, and I wasn't expecting it. And then we just started breaking out laughing because he flipped it on me. Because I'm always like, there are dudes, and I can think of like Ryan Getzlaf, who plays a longtime captain of the Anaheim Ducks. I could put my face on his face and get so close. There are guys who would allow me. Who was another dude? I think even did David Ortiz let me get that close? No, Jose Bautista. Jose Bautista, Jay Slugger, would let me put my nose either on his ear or on his cheek. Vernon Wells as well. Anyway, it's very obnoxious, but it was a disarming mechanism, and it also allowed the audience to see, like, experience something that they would never see. Like, they would never see a reporter violate the personal space of an athlete, because athletes are revered. And also it's just like, why would you do that? Like, who's that obnoxious to do that? Like, bro, let the mother bleeper breathe a little bit. But then I was like, no, I need to get into their atmosphere because I need to breathe. And the one person who would never let me do that is Kobe. Kobe, like, it would take like the whole interview. By the end, he would let me hug him.
Yeah.
And then it was like, I had to work for it. And then like, even the very last time I interviewed Kobe, I gave him a card, and on the card I was like, it was his final season. And then in the card I wrote, for your 30,000 points, here are 30,000 hugs. And I was like, okay, 1, 2, and I wanted to see how many I could give him before he's like, all right, this is ridiculous. So I think I maybe got to 2.5, and then by like at the end of the interview, I think I got it to like maybe 3. But Kobe was always a tough one to crack. To like, for me to violate his space, even when we're sitting in chairs, I would intentionally like move closer to him, and he would like move away, and like it just, there was a certain dance that he allowed me to do, and I was so grateful for it. But yeah, there are athletes that were very playful and like, okay, I know what this is, I'm going to play around. And then there are guys like, this is, Chris Paul once was like, Chris Paul, he was like, I was at practice. It was when he was at the New Orleans Hornets. Hornets are playing in Toronto. I always interview athletes on a practice day because they're in better moods. It's a risk trying to interview someone before a game. And as Dante knows, football players, because they play on Saturdays and Sundays, you can only interview them on Wednesdays, sometimes Thursdays, but you don't get access before the game. You get access after the game. And then you're hoping, please win. Because if they win, the guys will be in better moods. If they lose, you don't even bother going into that locker room, dressing room, clubhouse. So Chris Paul once, like, I was on question number 3. He's like, are you going to ask some real questions? I was like, yeah, no, these are real questions. I think I was either asking about, I don't even remember, but it was pretty ridiculous. And he was like, after the 3rd question, he's like, all right, he didn't even say I'm done. My guy just got up and he just walked away. And then he looked at his head coach, who was Byron Scott at the time, like, yo, B, this is stupid. Just like totally dismissive, and just walked away. I was like, that didn't go well. So I've had a few of those, but generally I've had more positive interactions than negative ones. I'm sorry, I'm just hijacking, as Dante mentioned earlier, hijacking this entire podcast, just going on these streams of random
give her
interviews
Cabbie.
And moments and whatever.
You're
But
good, brother.
that's the dopeness of what we're trying to build and bring to the table, is to allow people to get past the layers, because people have preconceived notions of who others are. Like, I know for me, when I used to have dreads, I used to have a mouthful of gold teeth when I first got up to BC, and I remember, I'm covered in tattoos. So I remember Scott Rentnell, that's my little redhead, that's my dog. He interviews me.
Oh, Scott Rintoul.
Yeah, and he interviews me the first time, and not only him, but like a few of the other news reporters, the beat reporters up there. After I started talking, they kind of give me that look, like I wasn't expecting him to articulate his words that way.
Oh, right.
So after a few seasons, I became like a go-to interviewee. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, get Marsh. He's, like when it was an issue when we had I was living in Atlanta at the time. I had bought a house in Atlanta. So I lived in Atlanta for like 7 years. So 2007, the whole Michael Vick thing happened.
Oh, right, with the dogs. Yes, of course.
Yeah. So I had went home because I had torn my MCL. So they was like, you on a 9-game injured, you could go home until, whatever. So I'm at home and a news reporter from Vancouver calls me to want to do an interview. So we're doing an interview. So they asked the Michael Vick thing question. So I said, well, I don't, the culture I grew up in, people fought pit bulls. It wasn't no big deal to me, but I mean, that's what people do, I said, if it's against the law, then he should, pay a fine and do whatever he needs to do. But I don't think he should be suspended and, his livelihood taken away. I just don't think it's that serious. They took that and ran with it, and I had to apologize. It was just a big deal, but it was funny. It was fun, but I became.
No, that doesn't sound like fun, bro. Getting up to having to apologize and suspend it. That's not fun.
No. What I'm saying is the process, that was one hiccup, but then I became more media savvy after that is what I'm saying. So I had to learn. That was my one learning experience, is like the reason people want to interview you is like because you're so authentic and you're real and you tell truth. But the way you have to convey it has to be in such a way that you answer the questions, but you don't go too far on this side and you don't go too far on that side. So I had to become a little more media savvy, but you develop relationships with some of the guys, and they're real dope and they're cool. My question to you is, who was your best interview or most interesting interview?
Most interesting would probably be Mike Tyson, because he was equal parts playful and then introspective. So I asked him a question about greatness, and I borrowed a quote from, I was reading Esquire magazine. It was a quote from Simon Garfunkel, I believe. And Simon Garfunkel was like in pursuit of greatness when he's a young man. So I asked Mike, I'm like, because you've achieved greatness in your life, you've achieved it before, is that on your radar to achieve it again? And he was like, not all great men are good men, and not all good men can do great things. Something like that. And I was like, it was profound. And like, and this is Mike Tyson, someone who I personally revered because he was the baddest man on earth for like 3 or 4 years. Actually, man, for his whole life. Because when you look him in the eyes, bro, it is like looking, what I can imagine is like looking in the eyes of a lion. When you look at a photo of a lion on your computer or your phone, and like a close-up of a lion's eye, it makes you feel a certain way. Yeah, it does. So then looking in Mike Tyson's eyes, I was in his backyard at his house in Vegas, or just outside of Vegas. He was totally calm, but just even the way his eyebrows arch, I was like, yo, if I had to fight this dude, I could see how psychologically I would be out of it. He would have the advantage because he was so fierce and intense. So that was like, and Mike Tyson is like he had incredible fame and fortune, and it was like he was swindled out of it. And then he had but also because of his own actions. I mean, there was Don King who was swindling him financially, and Mike Tyson was not a good person. Like, and he admits this. He was a real bad person when he was younger and did some horrible things. So I would say he was probably the most interesting of the people but listen, I've been very like fortunate. So there are guys like Steve Nash, who was an icon in Canada. Very, he's got a sharp sense of humor, and it's dry. And then Steve was always down for some, like, he also didn't really take himself serious, which made for incredible interviews. Same with Aaron Rodgers. He's the same. He does take, in our interviews, he doesn't really take himself serious. Doesn't have like a lot of sanctimony, but he's got that dry sense of humor. And he's also like an icon in football. To me, the greatest quarterback of all time, or not the greatest, the best. I think Tom Brady's the greatest, but I think Aaron Rodgers is the best at the position. And then if Patrick Mahomes continues on his trajectory, then Patrick Mahomes will be the best. Anyway. So then let me think of some other sports. I'm I'm trying to think in hockey, who's the most interesting?
You get a chance to interview Wayne?
Wayne Gretzky?
Yeah.
Yes. I wouldn't say Wayne Gretzky is that interesting though. Like he's the most famous athlete in the history of our country, and obviously an icon. And it's always a challenge interviewing someone of his stature, because you're thinking like, what can I ask this person?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't mean that as a slight that I don't think Wayne Gretzky's that interesting, because we don't really know that much about Wayne Gretzky other than like his excellence in hockey. Like, is Wayne Gretzky like a guy who's going to tell a lot? I think. So I've never been able to have dinner with Wayne Gretzky. So I think in that setting, I would then discover the real Wayne Gretzky. Is you have a few drinks, and then you could tell stories. I'm like, okay, like now I see a different side of you. But because he's such an icon and he's so protective about his image, you only get like the media side of Wayne. Right. So when interviewing the media, Wayne, there was one time I had to do a 25-minute Q&A with Wayne Gretzky. He was the world, not the World Series of Hockey.
World Ice Hockey Championship?
Yes, in 2016, which took place in Toronto. Great tournament. I wish they brought it back. 25 minutes with Wayne Gretzky. And I was stressed because it's a point of pride to ask athletes questions that they're not normally asked and to find ways to explore their personality. So I started with this. I was like, Wayne, for as famous as you are and as legendary as you are, I'm going to start, and I always do this. I'm going to start with the hardest questions first. So then they have a certain expectation of what that is. Wayne, when you send text messages, are you a ha 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 guy? Or are you an LOL guy? And then he started smiling because he didn't expect that. And then it's also a question of, oh, I can relate to Wayne Gretzky based on his answer because I also use a phone and I obviously am either LOL guy or I'm ha 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 guy. So it endears him to the audience that was watching because they have something, excuse me, and they have something in common with someone who they would have nothing else in, very little else in common with. So he looked over at his son. He's like, Trevor, I don't even know. Trevor, what am I? And then Trevor, his son, is like, you're a ha 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 guy. Because I guess I'm a ha ha guy. And then that, like, if he had any kind of apprehension or it was like that moment, like his guard was lowered. Because I didn't really get into hockey stuff until towards the end. I asked him another question about, I said, Sam Gagner, when he played for the Edmonton Oilers, there was a night that he registered 8 points. It was a career highlight. It was one, I think he tied you. And Sam told me that later on that night, he got a text message from you congratulating him. And then you signed it 99. Nice. And then he started smiling. I'm like, is that how you often sign, like, end your text messages with just 99? And he's like, yeah, I just left a message for Anže Kopitar, who I think is Slovenian. They were playing on like the best of Europe team. I think there was like Russia, Sweden, maybe Finland. And then there was like a collection of, anyway. So then, but Anže had like tweeted the note from Wayne Gretzky, have a great tournament, and then just 99. So that was another moment, like you hear, like it's basically speaking in the third person. But if you're Wayne Gretzky, you can absolutely speak in the third person. I know Deion Sanders, I think used to do it, call it just, prime time, blah, blah, blah. And like Ricky Henderson, a legendary baseball player from the
California.
Dante, obviously, Ricky. Yeah. Ricky would speak in the third person as well. And I think Will Ferrell was speaking as Ricky Bobby in the third person. Not Ricky Bobby. What the hell was his character's name in Talladega Nights? It was Ricky Bobby, right?
It was Ricky Bobby, yeah.
He would also speak in the third person, which is a hilarious way to conduct yourself. Anyway, that was, I'm sorry, Dante. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, Wayne Gretzky. I'm the Mike Tyson one because I actually cried. I was 12 years old. I don't know why. But when he lost to Buster Douglas, I cried. Right, yeah. Now, Mike Tyson to me is my greatest fighter of all time, period, bar none. That's just him. When you talk,
but he got beat by Evander twice, bro.
Listen to me.
Well, once, and then the second one was disqualified.
I'm gonna say this, and this is what I truly believe. I think if Mike Tyson fights a Lennox Lewis in that first 3 to 4 years of him turning pro, different fight outcome, different, much different. In my
But
opinion.
then Lennox would have been much younger, and he wouldn't have been. It was like when when Floyd Mayweather fought Canelo Alvarez. Canelo was like 20 or 21. Definitely did not have the experience that he needed in order to beat Floyd. But Floyd,
I don't know. I'm a Mike Tyson fan, and for that interview, me personally, I would love to spend the day with Iron Mike, and I would love to spend a day with Michael Jordan, because I've heard some obnoxious, crazy, he's just not a cool dude type, and this, being a professional athlete myself, this is coming from celebrities and other pro athletes that have had interaction with Mike, and they're like, asshole. So you got a chance to interview Michael Jordan, didn't you?
I did, yeah, but the interactions were very short. Okay. So I've heard similar things, and it just makes me more aware of how it takes, they say it takes 5 years to build a reputation and 15 seconds to destroy it. Right. Now, Michael Jordan is deified, like he is, and obviously after absorbing The Last Dance, Michael Jordan, it just reclaimed his spot on the Mount Rushmore of greatest athletes ever. It's Michael, it's Ali, it's probably Pele. I mean, the other two are up for debate. Who else is on the Mount Rushmore greatest athletes ever? But with Michael, I ambushed him twice on golf courses. And and the first time I hugged him, like I brought him a card as well. That was the first time I gave an athlete their card. So with Michael and then with Kobe. And I just thanked him for being a legend, and I thanked him for making fat kids believe that they could fly. And when you're on a golf course, it's totally silent, and there was a huge gallery watching this interaction. So I had to so Michael just read the card, and then he smiled, and then I had to tell the audience what was in the card so that they can react. And then I just hugged the dude, and I also want to say this, Mike, and then I hugged him for 7 long 1,000s. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. Now imagine some fat child is hugging you and then putting his head near your collarbone, but then you can also feel his heartbeat on your ribs. And then you don't really want this kid to hug you. 4 1,000, 5 1,000, 6 1,000. And I got to 7 before Michael had to pry me off. And then I found him 2 more times on the golf course to finish this interview. And then later, when I was in Las Vegas, we flew out for another interview. And that one was very cool. It was about a minute. I gave him this really crappy Photoshop. There's a cover of a Beatles album just called The Beatles. And there's just their heads. It was Beatles are John, Ringo, George, and Paul. So then I did a Photoshop called the Michael. So it was Michael Jordan, Mike Tyson, Michael Jackson, Michael Schumacher. But it sucked. I couldn't find the right high-res photos of each one of these athletes in as children or as in or in high school. So it just kind of sucked. He kind of looked at it, he's like, oh, thanks. And then he just gave it to his assistant. And then I asked him about being name checked by Jay-Z in Ninjas in Paris. And I said, hey, when Jay-Z is listing the other Michaels, the first time you heard it, did you hope that or expect that you would be in on this list? No, I was so happy that I was in it. And obviously it's an iconic song. It's one of Jay-Z and Kanye's biggest songs ever. And that song was a movement for a year. But anyway, it was very cool. So I had great interactions with Michael, but I've never been at a casino or at a restaurant or playing golf with him where you would see the real competitive Michael Jordan.
Oh yeah.
So Cabbie, I just posted that video of you and Michael on the golf course on my Facebook just to warm up the hype of getting Cabbie on the show. So I've seen it probably a dozen times within the last day and loved every second of it. As awkward as it probably was for Michael to have you, hugging him for 7 1,000s, I thought it was great. So, rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. We lost an icon and a legend this year, actually. So in your video with Kobe, you're in the limousine, and you're telling Kobe, you said, yeah, we got to go to Mike's house. Let's go to Mike's house. And Kobe's like, yeah, okay, we'll go. Did you ever make it to Michael's house with Kobe?
No, I didn't even make it to Kobe's house. So Kobe, we asked every year, can we shoot an episode? Can we shoot a segment at Kobe's house? And Vanessa's like, I don't want cameras. I don't want cameras in my house. And it wasn't until there was a Christmas game on ABC where it was Lakers versus Cavs. I think in LeBron's final year with the Cavs, and that was the first and only time that cameras were allowed in Kobe's house. And it was because it was a Christmas game on national television. And Kobe did an interview like in his living room or whatever. But we always asked, and I never got there. So even when we took that limo ride, we only drove around for a few blocks. And then, and there was a time I asked the director of PR for the Los Angeles Lakers, her name is Allison Bogley. I'm like, Allison, when the Lakers go to Charlotte, and this is just after Michael Jordan bought the team, you guys are there the night before. Can you ask if I can do an interview with Kobe and Michael, like, or can I take them out for dinner? She's like, absolutely not. Like, in your wildest dreams, the answer is no. Like your wildest, most lucid dreams where anything can happen, the answer is still no. So it never happened. And I'm sure Kobe and Michael met for a drink or whatever because they were friends and they had like a little bro, big bro relationship. But I wish I got to spend time with both together because I would just be like this. I wouldn't even say, hey, how you doing? Introduce myself and then just shut the hell up for the next hour and a half and just not talk. Just maybe laugh or like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. But then just absorb everything. Because when you're in the company of legends, then you just shut the hell up. You're just there, like don't overplay your step. Don't play yourself. Like DJ Khaled said, congratulations, you played yourself. Just don't say anything. And here's another thing. Sometimes I was at a party once with Drake. Every once in a while will throw these like private parties. Mm-hmm. So I went to one and it's just understood that you, without saying like, don't record anything on your phone, you just know just by the way he moves. So I was saying to like one of my friends, I was like, it's weird because like, it's weird that we're at this party and it's really cool. We found this like cool, like warehouse space and there's only like 80 people here and you had to know someone who knew someone to get invited to this party. And then everybody's just super chill. We're dancing. There's like free alcohol or whatever. And then like, I said to him, like, I kind of want a picture with the dude, but you can't ever ask to get a picture with the dude. Like, because it's just like it's almost like an unwritten rule. And that's just how Drake moves. And even when I see him like at basketball games or whatever, you just have to act. And I learned this a long time ago. You just have to act like you've been there before and just assume that you're going to see this person again. And maybe in the next time that would be more conducive of an environment where you can get a photo with a person. Cause as we get older, our memories are going to go to dust and we're not going to remember a lot of the cool ish that we did when we're younger. Like Dante, you won a Grey Cup in 2011 with the Lions, right? You guys beat Montreal? No. Were you with the team with BC? Was it 11 or 12? Which year did you guys win the Grey Cup?
06 and 11.
Oh, sorry, 06 and 11. But like, if you don't like get the images sent from like the Canadian press or Getty, or like in 2011, you probably had a BlackBerry. So if you don't have like those phones on your old those photos, like eventually you're gonna forget that you won 2 Grey Cups. So
I go look at them rings.
Okay, well, yes, you have those, but like you might forget that Corey Banks was on your team, or like Corey Banks is like unforgettable, but like
that's my brother. So no, not Banks, but I get what you're saying. There's pictures out there that because I get so many. I got so many, like people reach out to me on social media, taking pictures in pubs in Vancouver. It's a Marshall on the wall. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't, I had a pretty good career, but I didn't think, it's still people like, and then I got the email about the Hall of Fame. So it's just so much you forget. When I came back home, I've been retired since 14. I started coaching. So I'm back in the mix of things here. And you kind of forget, damn, I had a real good 11 years up there, man. People will send you, like you said, your pictures that I've never seen or I forgot about.
Right. Yeah.
Like the training camps when we have fan day, they send me those. I'm like, damn, I forgot I even took that picture. So yeah.
So it's important to have photos, but there's also like when you're in those circles, it's like a time and place. It's just a feel. And I've messed up many times, like with communications with athletes, texting too much, like I was an overzealous fan. And yeah, I've ruined some relationships in that way. And yeah, I always learn the hard way. So these are like life lessons that I've learned. And also like, oh, I mean, Dante, you're an athlete. So you like, it's like, when is the right time to either ask someone for their number or be like, yo, we should hang out. Like, it's always just a feel, you know what I mean? And you said, you know, you mentioned Scott Rintoul earlier, and maybe Scott was, I think you said he was one of the first people that you remember interviewing you. I don't know if you developed like an actual friendship with him, but there's like a trust that you have to develop with people. It takes time. And I messed up a few of those, but it's just, there's just such a feel. Cause like athletes to me are like, in some ways, like attractive women. And, you know, you want to spend time, you want to hang out, you want to like always have fun moments, but then you don't want to be like a creeper. And I've definitely been a creeper many times.
I mean, but that comes with the territory, right? So you're trying to interview someone, and for me personally, and I can only speak for me, I'm one of the coolest out. Like I people think of me one way, and I'm just Dante, so I don't really trip. Like when Ryan reached out to me, I was like, "What's up? You know, we going back and forth. It ain't no big deal." There are some athletes though have this prima donna diva. Listen, I'm from Oakland. I'm down to earth. You know, it's cool. I'm not tripping. But Scott, dope. Like when I was on the injured list, I got to go up in the booth in BC Place. I've never been in the other parts of BC Place because I'm always playing. It's either the locker room, some of the rooms downstairs in the concourse. I've never really walked around BC Place. The only time I ever had sat in the stands when we took our team photo. So
okay.
I'm not playing this game, and I'm sitting in the booth. We talking. I'm eating popcorn and shit. I'm like, oh, this is what it looked like. And I was up there for 11 seasons. And I had never been around in BC Place. So yeah, for me, I'm very approachable, and was very approachable, still am. But you know, just be yourself. Like I always felt like the creeper interviews were coming from people who were like, you could tell they fake. You know what I mean? Just be yourself, and it's genuine. You could tell energy. You know what I mean? So,
the first time I sat down with Dante, actually, so I reached out to Dante to do an interview on my 3rd and 1 podcast. Didn't know him from, you know, a hole in the wall, anything like that. So we agreed to do the interview. Dante puts his camera on, we sit down to do the show, and I just felt like a deer in headlights. I was scared, and I thought, what the hell have I got myself into, and where's this going to go? And we've turned the whole thing into this, and now Dante and I are interviewing players together. You know, we're interviewing Cabbie Richards right now. We're friends, and that's how it's worked out. So
awesome.
It's worked out well. So, Cabbie, have you been able to develop a personal relationship with any of these players over the years?
Yeah. And the advantage of creating the content that I did, which was always lighthearted, which was always about the athletes, it was never about the games, rarely about the game story, rarely about stats, never about controversy, is that I could foster trust easier because I wasn't going in with an agenda. I wasn't like doing gotcha journalism, and I wasn't talking about a concussion or an injury or some kind of controversy. It was just fun stuff: sneakers, food, girls, video games.
Yeah.
Can I see what's on your phone? Like stupid things like that. You know, who smells? Who's the teammate that you guys rip on? Or who's the person that never pays for the bill? Like just things, just regular dude stuff. So I got to develop many friendships with mostly hockey players, because obviously in Canada, hockey players are the NFL players of Canada. And one of my best friends is a guy named Mike Richards, and I think we bonded because both our last names are Richards. But he's a very close friend of mine. Like I've stayed at his house. When he won the Stanley Cup the second time with the Los Angeles Kings, they beat the New Jersey Rangers. Sorry, they beat the Rangers in 12, and then beat the New Jersey Devils in 14. but I went to his house in Kenora, Ontario. I spent the weekend there, and he had the cup, and we ate Lucky Charms out of the Stanley Cup. I did not earn that privilege, but I took it. Yeah. He's like, all right, so I bought some Lucky Charms because that's his favorite cereal. And then we woke up the morning and we ate Lucky Charms out of the Stanley Cup. Jarrett Stoll's another guy who I developed a relationship with him when he was with Edmonton. Very good friend. I've stayed at his house as well. There's been like a handful. I mentioned Getzlaf earlier. I've been to Getzlaf. I've been to like 3 of his homes. It's weird, but I've been very lucky, man. Very lucky. And again, it's just because what I quote unquote report or what I put out there is only the fun stuff. It's never like we might go out for a night on the town and meet girls. Like that's not that's not getting tweeted, or, I'm not doing a story on IG story. Like that stuff is like completely off the record and just dudes being dudes. When I see you tomorrow, then I'll ask you about, do you change your sneakers in between, at halftime, like I would a PJ Tucker, or, anyway, I was going to launch into a story, but let me just hold on to that one. Anyway.
Keep it in the bank.
Yeah. That has to be dope. I mean, to be able to make a living talking to celebrities and athletes and things of that nature, it has to be an interesting gig, I might assume.
You assume correct. Yeah, it is. The only part that's tough is creatively coming up with the next thing, or where to evolve the segment. It started as a streeter segment. I just go interview random people, and then I brought it, like I went, off the street into the arenas, into the clubhouses, into the locker rooms. And then it was like, a lot of times it was like collections. I'd have like 6 or 8 athletes in one bit. And I would bounce around, and then, which provided more humor than just like a one-on-one. Then a lot of times it became one-on-one interviews, and then I would involve props. I brought JJ Watt, like a JJ Watt survival kit once that he could give to his guys on offense, either the running backs or the quarterbacks, after he plays them, because he just knocks their brains out. Like, so I brought them, like in the survival kit, there was like sunglasses, Advil. We were talking about phones earlier. I brought multiple like flip phones, because when they wake up, they might wake up in 1999 and they need to call a taxi to get home, because that's how JJ Watt would play. Another time we found like the biggest Nerf gun at a Walmart just outside of Houston, or somewhere in Houston. He was doing like like the JJ Watt like softball weekend, and then I put on every jersey of the opponent that he would face that year, the quarterback, and then I would just tell him, like, where are you going to inflict the most damage? And I invite you to shoot me on my person, so in the face, in the ribs, in the stomach, in the collarbone. So every time I would take off another jersey, the Bengals, and then the Colts, and then the Ravens, and then the Chiefs, he would shoot me in a different part of my body with a giant. Anyways, it was really stupid stuff, but that's how, like, in the evolution of Cabbie Presents, this is in the TSN era, I was like, how can I push the envelope? What can I get away with? Where can we grow this thing? So it was hard, man. That was the hardest part, Dante, but mostly it was like in the moment, amazing to have these experiences with these guys.
Oh, so you now working with Bleacher Report?
Correct. Yeah.
And that's why you're in Vegas, correct?
Yeah. So it's a totally different thing now. I'm working on a betting portfolio, and betting is now growing in the United States. It's becoming more and more mainstream. I think it's 22 states or 25 states that have legalized sports betting, and that will have sports books in casinos, whether they're on indigenous lands, or they'll build casinos in the States. The biggest thing for us is like when the legal gambling will be on phones, because like that's certainly the next frontier, or that is the frontier. It's mobile, where people just have the book in their pocket. So we're just doing content which is like betting adjacent. We're not like, Bleacher Report doesn't have a sports book, but all our content is around, and obviously football is the biggest sport in America. It's, football, college football, basketball, college basketball, and then everything else. So it's been a trip to work on betting and to do like fun content around like guys scoring touchdowns or the first team to score 10 points, all these sort of quick hitter bets that that people with short attention spans will engage with because they're already on to like the next thing. If they're not betting on who's going to score the first touchdown or which basketball team's going to score the first basket or score the first 10 points, then they might get disinterested. So that's part of the challenge that we are experiencing, trying to get more people to engage with betting because we don't have like the sports book. So like we're building things around it that could be fun for them. And then we give them hoodies sometimes. And we communicate with memes because memes are like universal in the culture. Everybody can understand like these 97 different SpongeBob memes and what they mean in response to a huge play or heartbreak or something that's funny. Anyway, yeah, I'm at Bleach Report now, and living in Las Vegas has been an interesting experience.
Dope.
How easy was it for you to regroup yourself during an interview if things weren't going quite as you hoped?
Oh, great question. How easy? It wasn't that easy because I would start feeling a little embarrassed. And as every moment of silence goes by, it feels like it's magnified or multiplied by 10.
Yeah.
So if I forget my questions, I'll do this. I'm like, where was I going? And then I would go to my phone. So those moments wouldn't last more than probably 5 seconds, or I would just like, I'm an idiot. And I'd go to my phone, and then everybody's normally like, oh, that's cool. And since my interviews were rarely live, then I had the comfort of knowing this moment could be edited out of the interview, and the audience will never see this moment. So it was embarrassing in the moment it was happening. Sometimes I would get a little bit flush in my neck, like the heat would start to rise, but it would immediately subside. I'd check my phone. Now, if I forgot my questions multiple times during the interviews, that would be worse. I'm like, yo, what's going on with my brain? Yeah. And that certainly happened, but generally it would only happen once. I look at my notepad on my phone, get back on track, and then continue.
Yeah. And I absolutely know that feeling. And I've had to tell myself a million times in an interview that this isn't live and I've got all the power to, edit everything I want and come up with the finished product. Right. So exactly. That's how it works. Are there any players out there that completely decline to do an interview with you?
Yeah. I never got Russell Westbrook. That was always a no. Let me think. Never got Cam Newton. Never got Tom Brady. Tom Brady, we asked 40. I mean, that guy played in New England for 20 years. And we asked probably from 2009 to like 2019. Got to know or didn't even get a response from the director of PR for the New England Patriots, a guy named Stacey James. Got Gronk 3 times. Never Tom Brady. That was probably the one guy that I got a consistent no from every single year, like the most often. Who's another one? Never got Tiger. But Tiger was a little bit harder to get because golf is just trickier. Let me give you one more. Never got let me think of a baseball. Who do we go after in baseball?
Barry Bonds.
Never got Barry Bonds. We were set up once to get him, and this is when I worked at Sportsnet on a show called J Zone, and we were on a West Coast trip, and then he was late to the ballpark.
Okay.
And he's like, "Can we do it tomorrow?" I'm like, "Oh, we're flying out tomorrow." So I never got him. I only met him once, and he was pretty nice to me. Mm-hmm. Although I've heard he was prickly. But yeah, it was never got him, unfortunately. But we only asked once. It wasn't like we chased Barry Bonds. Not like Tom Brady, who just said no. Like he just doesn't do anything. So
do you come up with all of your own material, or do you have help?
Oh, Dave and I would. So Dave Cricks and I would collaborate. A lot of times we would, and even now, even though we haven't worked together for over a year, we
Yeah.
still talk on Mondays, because it was like Mondays were like, or sometimes Sundays were like when we would plan our week or the week, the upcoming weeks. And then we would just have a quick brainstorm on the phone, figuring out what the angle would be, because I got to get on a plane the next day or on Wednesday when a team was in town, or I got to go to Milwaukee or Florida or New York to get somebody, or I have to go to LA for a press junket. So Dave Cricks and I were longtime collaborators. Dave would have the better ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was, and then, so he's the person I would collaborate with. And then sometimes I would ask some of my friends who are funnier than me. I'm like, hey man, I need a line for this, or this is sort of the framework of, this is the concept of the idea. Like, let it marinate I'll hit you back tomorrow. Just let it cook in your brain, and then hit me up with something funny. Like if something comes up that's funny, let me know, and I'll use it. So my good friend Neil Scott, my friend Bryant Overholt, my friend Curtis Russo, all guys who are funnier than me Curtis for sure would then just punch up like a couple of one-liners, and then I would use them, and those are usually hit.
So you've always been an up close and personal kind of guy in your interviews. Case in point, PJ Tucker, which was hilarious, by the way. I just watched that,
man.
posted on my Facebook. That was hilarious. What is your favorite awkward moment in an interview?
Oh. Yeah, that is a great question. I've made so many of them. Favorite. Oh my gosh, favorite. That's a great question. You know, Mike Tyson rubbed Vaseline on my face once, which was amazing. You know, I mentioned this earlier, but when moving the chairs with Kobe, like moving my chair closer to Kobe to reduce the amount of space between us, and Kobe moving, it was like almost in unison. If like Kobe's like, Cab, if you move that chair closer, I'm gonna flip. If you move closer to me again, I'm gonna flip that chair. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Who said it? There was one time I was speaking to somebody so close, and the person's like, yo, I like, Earl Thomas, safety for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
He's like, I like this. Because I was like, yo, your battery, it just doesn't deplete your energy source, blah, blah, blah. I'm like barking at him. He goes, I like this. That was pretty awesome. Let me think of another one. Oh my goodness. There's got to be a Kyle. Once Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan smashed a cake in my face. That was pretty good. I wasn't expecting that one. Norm Powell poured a bottle of champagne over my head when the Raptors were celebrating their 2019 NBA championship during the parade, and champagne burns in your eyes, bro. It actually burns.
Hence the goggles.
Yeah, that wasn't as awkward. Man, that's the whole. Oh my gosh, let me hold on. I know there's. One time I'm trying to. Oh my gosh. There's got to be one where. Oh, you know what? I was taking a selfie once with Alex Ovechkin.
Yeah.
And then Alex Ovechkin hugged me, and he put his face against my face. And then we took a photo, and that was an awkward, like in a bad sense, but that was a cool moment. I did a bit about selfies with a bunch of NHL all-stars, and that turned out to be a pretty good moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Ovi's my favorite player.
I'm sorry. I don't have one for you. I just rambled off a few there, but I'll do better next time.
What scares Cabbie the most?
Scares me the most is not being able to come up with something creative or something new. That scares me.
Have you felt that you've always had to outdo yourself, and maybe, you've
Yes.
like come to a summit and you've always got to outdo Cabbie. You're always constantly competing against yourself.
Yes, that was, I felt that profoundly like midway through my time at TSN. So I worked there from 11 to 19, so 8-year stretch. And it caused me a lot of anguish. And when I was at TSN, people where I would run into them at hockey games, baseball games, Raptor games would say, "Oh, I really love the stuff you did with Kobe." And I was like, "Thanks, man." And it was always that. So in a similar way to a musician who maybe put out their second album was the one that really connected with the audience, but they're now on their 5th album, but people are still referencing their second album. And in what about the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th one? But people are like, "No, I really like the second album. I really like the stuff you did with Kobe." So it caused me anguish for a couple of years where I was like, nothing that I'm doing now is resonating like it did in 2008, 2009, 2010. So I eventually had to get over it, but it also pushed me to like be more creative and try to do crazier things so that there would be something that resonated. And I'm not sure that I ever did. I don't know if I was ever successful in doing it, but yeah.
Kept you going, right? Kept the drive alive.
It did. Yeah.
So do you think in the future, is there any way that you could be reappearing on, TV in Canada on TSN or Sportsnet? Could that happen again, or?
Sure. Anything's possible. And, listen, like any athlete, this is why am I even comparing myself to an athlete? Coming home, there's always, there's a lot of comfort in that. And there's a familiarity. And so I would never say no, like I'm never going to come home. It would be awesome. I certainly want to keep exploring opportunities here at Bleacher. Mm-hmm. So I would never close the door on like coming back home to work at either place. This is Cabbie Richards. You've been watching Inside the Minds podcast.